Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I'm so excited to be back with all of you for another episode of the podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us, and that helps the bands and artists like Miss Katrina here. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear, RAR. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is Katrina Cain joining us on the podcast. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I am lovely. It is so nice to have you on. It was such a lovely conversation that we had at Arlen Studios. I mean, my God, it was not even, 2 weeks ago, which is crazy, right?
Feels so much longer.
You're right. It really does. And as we talked before we started recording, like we got to sit on that lovely couch that was so comfortable that I still think about. So yeah, let's talk about that right away. Like that experience for you with the T is for Texas showcase.
That was such an amazing day. I stayed there pretty much the whole day because there's so many other artists I wanted to see and so many cool people coming in and out that I wanted to meet. Um, Arlen Studios is just iconic, and the fact that they were able to secure that space and hold their showcase in that space is so amazing. So I felt really honored to be included in that lineup.
Yeah, 1984 is when that studio opened, and I guess an Austin musician and his wife kind of run it.
Yeah, yeah, the Fletchers, Lisa
Yeah,
Fletcher.
yeah,
They're so nice. They're so nice and so supportive of smaller artists as well. So,
yeah. So you've been in Austin now for 4 years. You've played South by multiple times now. What for no one or for someone who's never been to South by, kind of give everybody like an idea of what it's all about.
so the basic South by has changed so much over the years, as I'm sure you know. I think in our memories, the basic South by experience is just an explosion of music and art. Of course, they have tech and theater, or it's not, sorry, not theater, film, as well, but it is just an explosion of the arts and especially the music week. Um, it is venues all across town. It is not one location, it's all locations, all venues. And it is really just a great community for listening to music, appreciating the arts, connecting with other people, whether you're a listener and a fan or a musician yourself. So it's really been just like part of the DNA of Austin for a very long time.
It's also weird for me because, or not weird for me, but as this was my eighth time going, it's great to see a lot more country artists being represented at South by, including you. And I think, maybe you were a trendsetter back in 2018 when you did it for the first time, but have you kind of noticed that as well?
Yeah, I have. I when I played my first time when I was an official artist, it was actually with a pop band. So it was not even the music that I'm doing now. And that was the thing, you really couldn't find any real country American, very few country Americana acts. And I think that they have really done a good job of bringing more in. And of course, the unofficial showcases have done a good job of that as well. Just trying to represent all genres and get some of the twang back into Austin.
So where is the craziest place that you've seen a show, or the maybe the most unusual place that you've seen a show during South by as a fan?
Oh my gosh. Probably a parking lot. I mean, it used to be there would be they would block off entire parking lots and just have these big tents and all this security. I know that there are much weirder places, but most of my memories are just following around groups of people and showing up somewhere. And of course, when I say this, those shows are happening at like 11 a.m. noon. So the music really starts early and goes till the very end.
Yeah. So you actually played a show today, earlier today.
I
Talk
did.
about that experience and talk about this monthly residency that you've had.
Yeah, so I'm in a residency right now, playing every Thursday at a restaurant downtown called Ariba Abajo. Um, and the way I got into this is I actually auditioned to be an artist in residence. So the restaurant is within a very large high rise that is half a hotel and half an apartment building, and of course, restaurants, a pool, etc. And so I auditioned to be an artist in residence. So I live downtown. I get to play all these different restaurants and just kind of barter for my rent. And it's been really a blessing. They're very, very kind and they really want to support artists. So it kind of helps me focus on my original music instead of kind of pounding the pavement and gigging wherever I can. I can just take the gigs that I want to, the shows that I want to.
Now, do you do those solo or do you have a full band behind you for these residency gigs?
I play them solo. So it's kind of like a happy hour thing. I play 4:30 to 6:30. So it's nice and easy. If it was later at night, I think a full band would be a little more appropriate, but it's so relaxed. I can just sit there, play songs, and I try to make it a goal that every week I play something new. So I write a lot of songs. So hopefully it's a new song that I've written that I'm trying out. Sometimes it's just I wanted to learn a new song and try something different on guitar. So I'll try to use it as a learning experience too. So it doesn't get stale.
So, are there any favorite covers that you've been playing during this residency, or do you pretty much just do originals?
Um, I do a mix of both. I always say, here are the songs I've written and songs I wish I had written. So I always try to add really songs I'm passionate about. But there's so many, but one of my favorite covers to play is Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen. We just recorded it and I have this kind of different arrangement of it. And then I love Jolene. I love playing that's kind of up-tempo finger picking. So I have a couple favorites in different genres.
So, you are a piano player by nature and learn guitar, is that correct?
Yeah, I just learned guitar a few years ago. Um, I just got so sick of bringing a keyboard. I had a very heavy keyboard and a very, you have to bring the stand and the pedal, all the cable, just so much more and a stool. So much more goes into it with keyboard. So I eventually sold that really heavy. It was a Nord. I had a beautiful Nord and I sold that and bought the lightest weight keyboard I could find. Just because I was so tired of carrying so much equipment. And then eventually I was like, how can I pare this down further? Let's learn a different instrument altogether. So that's kind of what happened. Guitar was always a dream for me. So I was like, there's no reason not to at this point.
And what was your first guitar that you bought? And what was the biggest challenge you had playing?
So this is interesting. The first guitar I bought was a Taylor GS Mini. So it's sort of a shorter scale guitar for those who aren't familiar in koa wood. Um, and the weird thing is that I took to finger picking pretty immediately, and I had so much trouble using a pick and strumming. So I had to like teach myself just eighth note strumming with a pick because for some reason I could not do that, but I could finger pick. And a lot of people said it's probably because you're used to piano, so I'm used to playing
Hmm.
melodies. Um, so I don't know why. So I can strum now. Finally, but I kind of did things backwards, I think.
Yeah, I think you're a fine guitar player. Like what I saw, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So do you typically then, when you're writing your songs, are you typically lyrics and then music, or are you music and then lyrics?
I love this question. It happens a little differently per song, but this is what I'll say. Excuse me. I have to start with some kind of chord progression, even if it's just three chords,
Mm.
just three. You can add some, spice later, but I have to start with that. But I have to write the lyrics and melody at the same time. So as I'm thinking of what the words are, I will sing full lines and then keep singing that line until it fits either syllabically or with the rhyme scheme. Um, a lot of people like to write just the lyrics. So it's like a poem and write poetry and then set it to music. And my brain just doesn't work that way. I think that the lyrics and melody really inform each other. Um, and the drama within the lyrics can really inform your next note choice to bring it higher or lower. And so I just find I have to write the lyric and melody at the exact same time.
So let's talk about something that I think you might be passionate about. I know I'm passionate about the role of AI in music and in songwriting and in, because I've heard it from both sides. What's your stance on it and what's your take?
I am very anti-AI. I'm not into it at all. It kind of freaks me out a little bit in general, but especially in the arts. I I can't find a practical use for it in music. Um, there may be a use for editing within DAWs, like recording software, but I can't see past that, what use it would have. Yeah, and I know I sound like a curmudgeon when I say that, but I think that the human experience is what we connect with when we hear music. It's truly like it's humans connecting with each other. And that's true whether you're listening to a very sad ballad where the lyrics are very deep, or you're at an electronic show listening to EDM.
Mhm.
And maybe it's the same repetitive lyric, but the production is so vast and beautiful and changing, all of the time. But someone has made that, someone has spent their time creating that, and their emotion that they put into that creation is what you're connecting with. So for me, I find it really, really heartbreaking um, to think about AI being used in art.
Yeah, well, I'll throw this out at you because this really made me ponder it. So I have a buddy that's a songwriter, and he said he uses AI if he is struggling with a lyric to like rhyme with the lyric that he wrote. And he'll say like, he'll use like ChatGPT or whatever and say, I'm looking for a lyric that's going to rhyme this lyric that I just wrote in the
Mhm.
vein of something, sadness or Bob Dylan-esque or whatever. How would your take on that be if?
I hate to say it, but I feel like that's a huge, I mean, it's like cheating on a test.
Sure.
I think part of what makes you a better songwriter is not like, oh, thank God, this I have a line that fits there. It's about the puzzle of figuring it out.
And the struggle.
I even used to, I mean, you can find like rhyming dictionaries and thesauruses online, and I physically bought a rhyming dictionary because it isn't laid out alphabetically, it's laid out by phonetic sounds.
Mhm.
So for me, searching this word of phonetic sounds and then saying those out loud to figure out that rhyme and then seeing the possibilities and branches from, well, that is not a word I thought of, but now that really feeds into this other lyric that I have. So maybe there is something with that. I think the puzzle of it is so important. I mean, it's like a crossword puzzle. It's like a math problem. Keeps you sharp, you know?
Yeah, it's like Wordle.
And yeah. I tell people it's a little bit like Mad Libs sometimes, to be honest. Once you
Sure.
get the structure of your song, I'm like, cool, I can just plug some stuff in. But you still have
Al-
to think.
Although I don't think anybody born after 2000 would know
I
Mad
know, but they were like so critical on
They
road
really
trips.
were. So let's talk about another venue in Austin that and I both revere, the
Mhm.
Continental Club. And I know you've only played there a couple times, but talk about the experience and like what that venue means to you.
Yeah, the Continental Club is just iconic. And that is it's an Austin staple. So many, I mean, countless famous, I hate the word famous because I don't care about the fame, but it's like the gravity of these songwriters you've looked up to gracing that same stage, which is just a stage stained with beer, like so many other dive bar stages. But it is just so wonderful. And um I I've used to visit Austin year after year after year when I was a lot younger. And that was always a venue I could get into during South by. It would be packed, but I would see some really cool people there, discover artists I didn't know. And so I kind of had it in my mind when we moved here. I was like, someday I got to play that club. And it is very hard to book there. So, I have been fortunate enough to play because I had some friends that were playing there and they would just pull me up on stage to sing a song. And then the West Texas Exiles, they did that. And then they got a residency there. And when they got their residency, they were allowed to choose artists for either end of their show. So basically the whole night. So I got to play my own set, a 90-minute set at the Continental Club. It was amazing. I went on at midnight. I couldn't believe people actually came because I was like, this is so late. No one's going to be here. I'm just going to claim it that I played the Continental Club. And people came out. So it meant a lot.
Yeah, the West Texas Exiles, those boys they're good dudes. They're really
Yeah.
I only hope the best for them. So, and they have, like I said earlier, they have a new album coming out in September. So that's exciting. So let's talk about albums. Your EP Gold. You released
Yes.
that last almost a year ago, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Coming up on a year. I released it April 2024.
Yeah. So like go back to that time, go back to, like going through like the songs that you picked, like how many songs did you have for the EP and then you narrowed it down to obviously what the final product was.
Yeah. I had probably, to be honest, not that many that I really, really, really was proud of. I probably had about 10 songs that I was like, I enjoy these. I enjoy playing them live. These are fine. But the five that really stuck out, two of them I had actually released as singles, like before I even knew I would do an EP. I was just kind of experimenting, to be honest.
Mm.
And that's why some of them have like weird release dates on Spotify. But yeah, so Gold was kind of the first song I wrote for the project. And I think what made me narrow it down was um, a feeling of like you feel when it's right and when that song locks in. And when I would play them live, those were the ones that got the biggest reaction and made the most sense to me. Um, if that makes sense. So there's a few other songs I left off the EP, and some might appear later, and some may, you know, die in my my notebooks.
Never to be heard again.
Yeah.
So where did you record it and who helped you produce it?
Yeah, it was pretty much self-produced between myself and my husband, who's also my lead guitar player. So he really had a lot to do with my three favorite songs, Gold, Things I'll Never Say, and New Mercedes. So he did a lot of great work on those. And we recorded them all over. So we recorded most of it at home, and we started recording when we lived in LA, finished recording things in here in Austin, sent out some like the drums and dobro and a couple of pedal steel. So pedal steel was recorded in Nashville. Drums and dobro were recorded in Denton, Texas, and then it was mixed by a guy out in Wimberley named Chris Bell, who is amazing. He works with like Reba and the Eagles. So it was just like a very long process of DIYing it and kind of mashing things together, and seeing if it would work. And I think we got some good stuff.
Yeah, I would say so. Let's talk about, in particular, the new Mercedes video and that song itself, the inspiration behind the song, and then let's talk about the video as well.
Yeah, I wrote that song actually when we were living out in LA, which is partially why the video was shot in California. It's shot in Palm Springs. And I was just like, it's funny because Gold, the title track of that EP, is about being grateful for just whatever you have in life. If you woke up this morning, like you're doing pretty good, and that's where I was at when I wrote that song. Just grateful to be alive, grateful to see the sunsets and take a walk with my dogs. Like that's where I was when I wrote Gold. Writing New Mercedes, I was like, man, I wish I had $1 million. I wish I had a fancy car. I wish I had all these things. And that it's kind of has a double meaning though, because I was wishing I had these things, but almost also self-reflecting that maybe I was kind of lazy, didn't work hard enough to get there. And I kind of, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. It's meant to be fun, not depressing, but kind of to point out. And I think that's like a really human feeling of like always wanting more. And sometimes that can make you feel down, but in this case I was just like someday, someday I'll get there. It'll be nice. And hopefully I pick up the pace and start working a little harder. I think it was like an anthem like that for myself.
So, are there any topics in songs that you won't touch? Or are there any topics that you won't touch in songs?
That's a good question. I write about almost everything. I have not written much about my family. I've mentioned like my mom and dad, and I got a lot of inspiration from my dad for a song called Truck Song. Um, but I don't really write about my childhood much, and I don't write about my family, and I think probably at some point I will. But for some reason, I feel very comfortable writing about emotions that are real to me. Um, but I'm not always comfortable depicting a autobiographical story, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um, but it's something I would like to try. I think, do you know the song Dixie Darlin' by The Wilder Blue?
I know the Wilder Blue, I just don't know that song.
Yeah, they're so good. The
Yep.
reason I bring that up is because it's just a classic story song. Like it tells a story from start to finish.
Mhm.
And it's something I've never quite done. And I think it would be interesting, but if I did, I think it'd have to be maybe a childhood song, maybe a family song.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially if it's the first one.
Yeah.
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 Maybe you'll write it next week.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm like inspired.
You might not get any sleep tonight.
Yeah.
So, one of the shows that you're upcoming or that you're playing is at the Under the Rock at the what is it? The Quacks? What do you say? The
Yeah, it's called Quack's Sound Space,
okay.
and it's part of a bakery and restaurant called Captain Quackenbush's.
So, talk about that venue, and I guess it's really you said it's really like the sound is great there, correct?
Yeah, it's sort of a hole in the wall situation where you don't expect it to be there, and then it actually sounds very good. They'll set up chairs like it's a theater, or they'll let you do tables like bistro style, so it's really great. Before I moved to Austin, it was a venue called Strange Brew, and apparently, from what I've heard, that was like an iconic hangout for the songwriters in this area.
Okay.
And so I am not super familiar with what happened to that. But it got turned into this delicious bakery, very delicious bakery. And so they kept that stage going. So it's a stage with a marquee, and I've played there quite a few times. And it's a fun little space. It's quirky and it's fun. And yeah, I'm playing for this wonderful kind of showcase called Under the Rock that kind of mixes playing your songs in an intimate environment with an interview that is like psychology based, which I think is really fascinating because after all, we write songs because we need to express things. So it makes a lot of sense.
Mentally heal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, exactly.
So, speaking of bakery, I we finally got to have the beauty that is a Round Rock donut.
Oh my gosh.
So good. Oh my gosh, so good.
Oh yeah. I've had them one time because I was like, I have to stay away from this.
Yeah,
It's so good.
yeah, they're like potato chips, you know.
Yeah.
So you have moved quite a bit in your life. I would love to hear from someone who's only basically moved once in their life, how that affected you growing up, how that affects you still now, yeah, like explain that kind of life that most people don't, have lived.
Yeah. I I want to start by saying I have a lot of gratitude for moving. because half of me feels like what a privilege to have lived in one house your whole life. I envy people like that. And half of me feels like what a privilege I had to to have to go through difficult things as a child and like when making new friends and try to go through that and see other parts of the country and be around different types of people. So I think there's beauty in both of those things. Um, I was my dad's side of the family is from Texas, and I'm like fourth generation Texan. I was born in Dallas. But at the time, the family moves had already started. So my family was living in Maryland, actually, and they were like, we got to have this one in Texas too. All the other kids are born in Texas. So they drove back literally just to visit grandma and have me. In Dallas. But I moved from Maryland to Wisconsin to Ohio, over to Connecticut, which is where I spent a large chunk of my childhood. Um, and I love New England. Like New England is so beautiful. Um, I moved to Massachusetts to Boston for like 9 months for my first year of college before transferring to a school here in Texas. And I moved back to like my dad's hometown. So I immediately was met with a lot of family history, reconnecting with all of my aunts and uncles on this side and learning a lot about my genealogy. Um, and I stayed there for 10 years before moving out to LA and then swiftly moving back to Texas. So for some reason, Texas keeps calling me back. I've lived here the longest of any state. So I consider myself a Texan, but it's interesting. I think everyone needs to move at least once in their life. Uh, but hopefully multiple times to different areas. And I think that people should give it a shot and stay like a couple of years before deciding. That's the hardest thing is having to get a snapshot when people say, I'll be there a month. I'm like, you gotta stick it out a year or two, to
Yeah.
know a place. Um, but I'm grateful for it because I have a lot of a lot of experience having to pack up and start over, even as an adult. Because I did that between 18 and however old I am now, I've started over 4 times. So it's tough. Um, and I think it affects me a lot as an artist because the first thing people want to know is where are you from? So usually I'm like, well, I'm from Texas. But if they press, they'll be like, well, you didn't graduate high school. And then it becomes like this weird long conversation about like me trying to prove that I'm from here, which is fair, I guess. But, it's kind of interesting because I understand that I am not fully the Texas mold because I did have a childhood that was influenced by New England things, maple syrup and the leaves turning and all of those beautiful things and a lot of snow. I was really influenced by that because that's what I grew up with. So there's a lot of I think different parts to me, because of that.
So does the heat, like does July, August bother you in Austin, or are you okay with that?
I love it. I
Okay.
love the heat. I cannot return to the cold. I never will. It could be my perfect is like 85, 90 degrees. And when it gets to 100, I'm like, this is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. But I think last year it was over 100 degrees for like 100 days straight in Austin. And I was like, great. And everyone else was dying.
So is it an interesting dynamic having your husband also in your band, or is it just kind of like whatever?
It's amazing. It's perfect. I mean, he is an amazing, amazing musician, amazing guitar player. Um, did a lot with production for me in the past as well. Um, And I think it's also wonderful to have someone you can lean on. So I kind of give him the role of music director also, which takes a lot off my plate. Because when you're leading a band, there's a lot of I'm thinking about everyone else and what they need from me. So being able to kind of pass that off to him, especially like if we have someone new in the band, like my bass player is sick, so we need to get someone else in. And they may never have played with us before. We probably won't rehearse. We'll just throw them on stage. So I feel confident they've prepared, but I also feel confident that my husband Andrew can help lead them through it. So it's really great having um someone so close to you in your band. I mean, because he heard me write these songs. He heard these songs being written. So um, it's great.
Yeah, and there's a special connection too because yeah, he's heard it from start to finish, and now like
Yeah.
it's a finished product, and now it's still evolving because you're playing it different live, or you're adding a tag or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is like if I play solo, if I play somewhere really, really fun solo, the first thing I want to do is go home and tell him how great it went. So, when he's in the band, he's there. He can experience it too.
So let's talk about family history. So who else in your family is musical? Anybody else have some chops?
I'm the only musician, honestly. I did get a lot of inspiration from my grandma and my mom and my dad, really because they also all really loved music and encouraged it. And my grandma had this really beat up old baby grand piano that she passed down to my mom. So I spent my whole childhood just tinkering around on the piano or laying under it as my mom would play. And um, my mom had picked up some instruments too. And my grandmother had a beautiful singing voice, huge range. And my dad would kind of strum some guitar. So it wasn't the family band dynamic, and no one else went into it professionally. But I think having parental figures, and in this case, pretty much three of them, that were at least interested in and supportive of music enough to keep those instruments in the house and always have a record playing like that. I think that's what made me a musician, really.
Yeah. Do you remember the first album or cassette that you bought?
That I bought personally with my money is the
Yeah.
Spice Girls,
Everybody
which
loved
is,
the Spice Girls.
oh my God, I love the Spice Girls. When you're a little girl, you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, but the first concert I went to was Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson, and I'm very proud of that one. So I think
Wow.
that evens out the Spice Girls, I hope.
Yeah. What year was that? Do you remember?
Oh man, I don't. It was when they did their Field of Dreams tour. So they were touring like
Okay.
little college stadiums. And they played at the time, I would have been very, very early teens, like 13 maybe. Um, and they
That's
were playing
awesome.
at Yale Field. And that at that time we lived in Connecticut. So they were playing at Yale Field. So, and my parents, of course, my being from Texas, they love Willie Nelson, they love Bob Dylan. So they're like, we gotta go. I just remember I was like, man, it smells so weird here. And my mom was like, just don't breathe in. Now we're like going to a hippie fest with like a bunch of kids in tow, but I love
It,
it.
it is weird that Texas is not like, well, obviously I know because it's, a red state, but it is
Yeah.
weird that like it's not legal there.
I know. I actually think that is one of the weirdest things about it, especially because most people do.
Right.
So it's just a weird thing. I don't know. I preserve my voice, but being in a band, you really can't get away from
Right.
from it. But yeah, I don't know anything about the rules and regulations, but I do think that Texas would benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would save a lot of people some time and money probably too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to talk about, this business, the music business is hard. It is
Yeah.
difficult. It is not easy. When fans see you on stage, that is like 1/10 of it.
Yeah.
But being a woman in this business, like talk about like are there any like situations that you can remember that, you were like, man, if I was a man, this would not be happening to me.
Oh yeah, it happens daily. I have people uh describe to me how to use a guitar tuner, and but they'll be like these guys will be like, well, when the little color goes up and meets that color, that means it's in tune. I have had that happen like within the last year. I had a guy like I had to argue that I should be paid the same as the other musicians on stage because singing is literally an instrument. Also, I have a degree in music and with a minor in music theory, so I was the only degreed musician on stage, and he didn't want to pay me evenly. And then I argued for it, and then he just like threw cash kind of like on the table in my direction and said, "Here's your equal pay." Um,
Wow.
but it happens all the time. I think, unfortunately, most it's a very male dominated field, and the chick singer thing was so prevalent for so long that people think that if you're a woman in music that that's what you do. um I feel, to be honest, a little worse for women who are solely instrumentalists, because I know, and because I've heard them tell me this, every time they walk on stage, they think that she's the singer, and they're like, no, I play bass and I rip at bass, and so um, it's unfortunate, but I think the best revenge is just doing it really well.
Yeah. Well, I must say, in the last 2 years at South by, I've definitely seen more female-fronted bands, like, and
Yeah.
more like rock bands too. So, like, that's great to see. Like, I think that's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, I love to see it. And I know there's a lot of talk about the percentages of like festival lineups or rosters or radio stations. And I do, to be honest, I do understand, like, I always want to see the best quality music and the best music. I think there just is a lot out there that is, female fronted, and there's a lot to discover. So, and more coming up. So, um, thanks for saying that.
Of course. So, speaking of famous music, you chose Rhiannon as a cover that, really kind of puts you maybe on the map. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think so.
What is it about that song that made you want to, take that leap with it?
I had played it for years and years at my when I was just playing piano. I would do these lounge singer gigs. So you're just in a swanky bar playing a little piano. And I just thought, like, man, I've got to get something interesting in here. And I just loved Rhiannon because it's so haunting. And I think the whole myth of it is it's like a Celtic witch or something. Don't fully know.
Yeah.
I remember reading about this, but it's,
I think you're right. Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole like witch thing. And I think women are always like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, but it's just such a haunting song with a haunting melody. And I've been fortunate enough a couple times recently to play it with my full band. Um, and that was really fun. Getting to hear the actual guitar solo and that is really fun.
Yeah. So let's talk about The Voice,
Okay.
a TV show that has been on for a very long time. What we say, like 20, at least 23 years or 23
23
seasons?
seasons, and they have 2 seasons a year.
Right. So at least
So
10
like
years.
10, 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had American Idol, then, what was the other one that was over
Uh,
it? The X
America's Got
Factor.
Talent. Oh, X Factor. I
Yeah.
forgot.
And then there was, well, America's Got Talent, and then The Voice. And
Yeah.
here you are, Katrina, at whatever age you were, you said to yourself, I want to go on The Voice.
Yeah. Well, may I be candid?
Of course. I
Um,
wouldn't expect less.
okay, good. I mean, I did sign an NDA, but you can find all of this out online. I was actually reached out to by them to audition. And so I was and they do this a lot. This is open knowledge. But they do scout for that. So I think it was like it was almost 40,000 people auditioned my season alone. So that is a lot of people standing in line. But there are also some fortunate people who they just kind of flew us to Hollywood. So when it came up, and the reason it came up is because this is an interesting lesson for anyone who's listening who is also a musician. When I was doing these lounge singer gigs and jazz gigs, I played a jazz gig at a very small club in Fort Worth called Scat Jazz Lounge, because my degree was in jazz. So that's kind of how I got into that for a brief period of time. And I sang the absolute worst I've ever sung. Okay. But the bartender there was also a musician and music lover, and I think we were Facebook friends. And then it must have been 6, 7 years later. Turns out now he's a casting agent in LA and a musician. He still does both. And he emailed me and was like, "Hey, I hope you remember me. Do you want to audition?" And I was like, "Sure. Heck yeah." And that's when I was like, "What don't I usually see on that show?" And I was like, "Well, piano cover of Rhiannon. Here we go." But yeah, you never know who's listening. Truly, you never know.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, you said earlier, like it was about a 3 month window from when you actually performed to when it actually was, aired on public, and you weren't allowed to say anything, right?
Yeah, nothing. You were not allowed to say a single peep until um they sent out a very specific graphic with like a specific caption you had to post on like a specific day. And even like we had media training and stuff where they kind of went over what you are and are not allowed to do and say in the meantime. Because there's a lot of spoilers that can happen from like wearing stage clothes that are suddenly you have these beautiful stage clothes, to, certain people and things to talk about and pictures you're not allowed to take or show. So it's of course with film and TV, it's very secretive. So yeah, long process, long wait.
And you said it was a 9 month process from March to December?
Yeah, for me, so they were already in executive casting when they reached out to when they flew me out. So I think they flew me out in March of that year um, for callbacks. And then I had to fly out again in April, I think, April or May. And then I I went back in June to actually do the audition that we taped. And then from there, I stayed, gosh, all of June, a couple weeks in July, and I think a couple weeks in August because I had gotten to a couple of rounds. Um, and then you wait for 3 months and they prep you on stuff, and then your shows start airing. And because the season didn't end till January or February, but I was released from my contract a specific amount of days after my the air date of my final episode. So that's why it lasted through the end of the year for me until I could really do things outside of the contract. Which makes sense. I'm not mad about that. But so it's a long process. If you do those shows, it's really a lot.
So where were you at, would you say, in your career when all of that happened?
I was in a really, really fortunate spot in my career. I think that this happened at a good time because I I was singing with a pop band and writing some singer-songwriter stuff. I didn't play guitar yet, and I was just figuring out really what I wanted my sound to be. Um, and that's why I think I was so fortunate is because it really didn't disrupt what I had going on because to be honest, I didn't have much going on,
Yeah.
but I had enough that I knew I still wanted to do this, do music, and I wasn't deterred by like difficult things like being kicked off the show or, having to live in a hotel with like 100 people for months on end. I was not really deterred or hurt by that because I had already done so much in music. I was a full-time musician. I'd written a bunch of songs and tried a bunch of different outlets for my music, different genres. And so I felt okay with experimenting with this. Um, but not enough to going on to disrupt it. And that's kind of what I tell people when they're thinking about doing these shows. I'm like, if you have a tour coming up, if you have an album that you're ready to release, if you know all of these things are on the horizon, don't do it because you don't want to disrupt that momentum. If you've not a lot going on, but you want to be a musician, like go for it, you know?
Yeah, I guess, is there like a lesson or like a maybe like advice that you would give someone that was in your position or something that you would do over during that process that you didn't?
Well, I would the advice I typically give that I succeeded at is I tell people like treat it like a really, really, really cool gig. That is a learning experience. Like you are being paid like union dues for or union rates for filming and you're being, able to be on stage and sing. So it's a gig, a really long gig. And there's a lot to learn. So that way you can remember that this is not the end of your career if you don't win.
Mhm.
Um, that's what I usually tell people. Now, what I wish I had done differently is be a little more social with uh, people who were other contestants on the show.
Okay.
Um, I actually just met up with someone I had not seen since that show, and she and I reconnected, and we were like, "Why didn't we hang out the whole time?" But yeah, I spent a lot of time in my room trying to write songs and also just watching a lot of Netflix. Because it's a lot. It's a lot being with people all of the time. And so I think other people were a little better at managing that anxiety, that social anxiety, and just kind of trying to make connections. So, um, it's not the end of the world if you don't, but if I could do it over, I think I'd be a little better about that.
Yeah. Did you like living in LA then while you were there?
I did. We weren't able to see much because at the time, what they would do is sequester you to a hotel. So we could not leave the hotel. A van would take us to filming and a van would take us back. And if you needed to go to Target, you had like a van would take you there and time you for like 30 minutes, and then it's crazy. And I think it's more lax now. Uh, and the reason why they do that makes a lot of sense too, because they would have a lot of people leaking stuff when they're going out to the club in LA, just like drinking and blabbing their mouth.
I'm
So,
around.
yeah, exactly. Just talking. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. But I really liked LA when my husband and I ended up moving back there just a couple months after I got off The Voice. So I enjoyed it while I was there, but I really liked it when I had freedom.
Yeah. I guess not. I guess so. So, let's talk about new music. What do you have in the pipeline that we can share or that you can share?
Yeah, I've recorded an entire record in January. It is 11 songs. I am so excited. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be keeping that hush hush or not. I don't care. I'm very excited about it. I'm happy to tease it here. So it is 10 originals and one cover. And I won't spoil what that is, but I think people will like it a lot. And so we are putting some finishing touches on it and trying to really decide how we want to go about it. But we should start seeing music actually coming out, trickling out little by little soon this year. So
Yeah, it's funny because when I was listening to your catalog, I didn't know that you were in a pop, that you were in a pop like band before that. But after hearing that, like I kind of feel like if country music was like fingernails, you're like the nail polish.
I love it.
It's like you kind of put like a kind of like a pop kind of polish on country music. It's not pop country though. Is that fair to
Thank
say?
you. You know what? Yeah, thank you. I love that description. I'm adding that to my bio. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that description because it's so hard to qualify country music and people feel very strongly about it. I will never say I'm Loretta Lynn traditional in that vein, but I really don't write like a Carrie Underwood type song either. And the Nashville pop country that people think of is very different than what I do. So it's kind of hard to quantify. A lot of us, when we don't know, we just say Americana. We're just like, oh, no, 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 I'm American.
Yeah, or
It's just what we don't
singer-songwriter, right?
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll put other labels on it. But yeah, I think I love your description of that.
Yeah, I think it's accurate, and I try to be accurate. So yeah, you're more than welcome to use it. So let's talk about the boot show because if you look at my IG profile or my photo, I that is from last year visiting Alan Boots on South
Yeah.
Congress. and I put on a pair of boots that I did not look at the price tag beforehand. And I was like, oh my God, these are amazing. They were $2,800.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah. Like, so talk about your love of boots and why you started this little series that you're doing.
Yeah, I love cowboy boots. I have a I have a pair sitting over there. I won't go in them, but there are these tiny little red boots that I wore as a child. They're so tiny, and I still have them. I've just always loved them, and I think after I spent a significant amount of time in Texas as an adult, I really was like, wait a second, I deserve to have boots. And they're kind of addictive to start buying because they have so many beautiful patterns, beautiful stitching, different exotic leathers. If you're into that kind of thing, and I just find them very interesting. I inherited this really odd trait from my dad where when you get on a hobby, you just learn everything that there is to know about that hobby for some reason. And so, I mean, there was a time I was like looking up diagrams of boots and trying to like quiz myself on the actual terminology of like shoes, like a cobbler would know, you know? I was like, okay, this is going too far. Um, but I really think that they are such a fun statement and anyone can wear them. Like everyone's allowed to have cowboy boots and they're very useful. If you live in a place that has snakes or scorpions or we have tarantulas here in Austin also that live wild. So, um, they're just useful. I love them. So I like to review them on my Instagram for no one. No one asked for this.
And
I just decided.
how many have you done now?
I had done like two or three videos in the past and I stopped. So
Okay.
I have two current videos out
Okay.
on my Instagram and many more to come because I have like 13 pairs of boots and counting. So, um, not as much as some friends. I know a guy who has like a closet. He said he's got to have like 80 pairs of boots. And I was like, I'm so impressed. Let me see your closet.
Now, does husband share the same? Is he a big boot guy too, or not as much?
Not a boot guy, can't get him to wear boots. He's from El Paso and born and raised, which makes me question why he wouldn't wear boots because Lucchese is based there and so is Tony Lama. And also it's the desert, so he's been out in the desert all the time, but he just is not really a boot guy.
Okay. He doesn't
Maybe
like
someday.
tarantulas.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm gonna convince him. I'm gonna convince him someday.
All right. Well, Katrina, this has been so much fun. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And best of luck. If you ever get to the Mid-Atlantic for a tour, I would love to come see you. If not, we'll come see you at South by next year.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us and helps the bands and artists like Katrina. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear, RAR. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Dog. You've been great. This is the Music Lab Podcast.